I knew that from my background that reporting isn't a waste of time. It's really important, but you've got to get the right information in. And I was not willing to spend hours on each account to collect the data. It was just not what I was going to do. And I think I looked at Databox really, really, really early on,
Yeah, it must have been early.
um, and it couldn't do what I was trying to achieve. And then I actually saw when Pete came on board, and I was in bed and I was on my phone and I reactivated my account and set up a dashboard and was like, this is probably going to do what I want to do now.
Charles, welcome to the Agency Spotlight series. How is your morning over there in Melbourne, right?
Yeah, hey Kevin, how are you? It is a brisk 6:10 a.m., but it's actually not brisk. We've had a nice little hot spell, so the weather actually walking to work this morning was beautiful.
All right, so you've already had a walk to work at 6:10 a.m. already.
I have.
Um, so yeah, I just wanted to get started here with some basics about your agency. I know you've got a little bit of a different setup than a lot of the agencies we talk to. So could you just tell me about like uh, how many employees you have, what kind of clients you typically work with, and then like what kind of services you usually offer, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, sure. So we're obviously located in Melbourne, Australia. And so my agency size is there's two of us in Australia, and then I strategically partner with three other agencies around the world. And so the full team globally would be about 120. But that doesn't mean that they're obviously all my staff and all that sort of stuff. So when I started this, the challenge was actually finding people that understood inbound and the methodology, also then understood HubSpot, and I just couldn't find them. And at the stage of life I was at, I wasn't ready to go and hire a big team. So I wanted to challenge the status quo a bit and do it slightly differently, and then leverage that horsepower as well. A lot of people say they're 100% in-house, and that's fine, but we're not, and I leverage that in a big way. So it's a bit of fun, slightly different. And I suppose what our specialization is very much bringing that whole customer journey and integrating the whole thing. So from day one, I've been really, I suppose, it's been really important to us to understand the full technology journey and then that customer journey of how they flow. And when there's not, the systems integrated, that's a problem. So we try and work with a client on that. So it's quite technical what we do. And then as far as our niche and service offering, I've tried to niche, but initially it was actually HubSpot. That was our niche, that we just became HubSpot experts. And then that's led into more scalable type solutions. So service providers, unless they have a really big footprint, multi-site, turning over, literally millions of dollars. It's got to be an actual solution where it's scalable. That's the most important thing for us, and that they're expert in their field. That they know what they want. They know where they're going. That's really important to us.
And so, how do you execute like inbound marketing services? Do you act as like a project manager, or how do you work with those agencies that you partner with?
Yeah, so we've got a series of products now that we're working through at the minute, which is to break it down into micro components, depending on where the problem the client has. We've sort of identified that to be four buckets. But if you look at a full inbound growth, call it whatever you want, retainer, it's gonna have all of those four buckets in it. And depending on the size of that, piece or body of work. So it comes down to what the client's problems are at the end of the day. That's all we generally focus on. Tell me your problem and we'll try and solve it for you. And we just work our way through the problems. And then we have a quarterly or, business growth health check, call it whatever you want, but gives a client a score, and that's how we pretty much gauge everything. What's their health, what's their score, and if they're, 80 to 100, the reality is there's not much we can probably do for them. They're pretty good.
Yeah.
But if they're below, we would look at where the biggest gaps are and just try and fix those gaps, and just work our way through that. And that, as we all know, that takes 2 to 3 years to implement it all fully. You can't do it all in one hit. And I think that's where people probably try and or probably fail a bit. They try and do too much too quickly. Just nail one thing a quarter, even a year. That can make a massive difference to a client.
Yeah, sure. And what was life like before Databox with running this whole setup?
Yeah, so it's been interesting. I didn't do reporting off like period off the bat. No, we obviously implemented Hub with most of our clients straight away. So that was like, nearly game changer for them because that opened up the visibility. And I knew that from my background that reporting isn't a waste of time. It's really important, but you've got to get the right information in. And I was not willing to spend hours on each account to collect the data. It was just not what I was going to do. So, rewind about 3.5, if not 4 years, I looked at a series of tools, and I think I looked at Databox really, really, really early on.
Yeah, must have been early.
And it couldn't do what I was trying to achieve. And then I actually saw when Pete came on board, and I was in bed and I was on my phone and I reactivated my account and set up a dashboard and was like, this is probably going to do what I want to do now. So pre-Databox, I just didn't do reporting. It would be very much, implementation, project plan, try just basic, simple metrics without getting too deep.
And how has life changed since you started using Databox? Like, what have you adjusted at your agency?
Yeah, so we've gone from whether we've fully deployed it to clients yet. Like obviously most of our clients have access to Databox. Like most technology, user adoption is always the hardest. But we've set it up internally with all of our retained clients that they've got their client-facing dashboards, and we have some internally facing dashboards as well. And a lot of the client, Brian introduced me to the lead lag measurement everything around that. And so we've internally deployed leading indicators, and then our clients have got pretty much the lag indicators because that's all that they care about, as much as we try and coach them on leading indicators. So when they go, well, why is traffic down? We go, well, your leading indicator says you only published one blog this month, or you only have serious amount of ads running. So that's how we sort of split it up now. And we're not quite deployed that yet, but we're pretty close.
Just before you even get to that level, how do you set the priorities in the sales process for how you're going to work with a client? Are you setting a concrete goal? Is it a quarterly goal? Is it an annual goal? How do you help them get in the frame of thinking that this is what's going to happen when we're using Databox or just when you're working with Synx?
Yeah, so it really depends on the engagement that we have. To start with, I actually found that we were trying to set goals far too early with a client, and that actually can become a problem because if they're not used to it, there's no point forcing them into things that they're not used to. Like I try and educate and empower rather than, push what we want. So generally we will go in and deploy as many quick wins as we can. How we do that, there's various ways we do that. And then once we introduce it, we then also will have deployed Databox and have the data to then present. And then we can generally work towards the goals. So once you've got that baseline metric, we can then look forward and reverse engineer the goals to then set these quarterly goals in place. And that's generally how we would build that out. And what those goals are, how long's a piece of string really? It just really depends on the client. Very rarely is it, we want new visitors or we want actually more leads. It's, the website's not performing, or, visitor to lead metrics are wrong, or lead to customer metrics are wrong, or, don't know full funnel metrics. And that's the ultimate goal we want to have is from first touch through to customer. What are all of the metrics through the funnel? And then what are the activities that need to happen to move someone through those stages?
Yeah, and so when you're not setting a concrete goal up front, I totally agree with you, by the way, that it's going to feel a little intimidating, and that's also the time that you have the least information about them, so it's hard for you to say something concrete. How do you set expectations in more general? Do you just say we're going to grow your traffic, we're going to grow your revenue? How do you communicate just how much you're going to be able to offer?
Yeah, it comes down to them. So we do have a piece in our process which will be literally setting, all of the goals. Now that, as I say, is further down the process now. It was too early, but they've got to know what they want too. And then what we do, we reverse engineer the numbers. So once they know, okay, cool, come out with a figure or a number or whatever it is, we would then reverse engineer it off their data. And then it opens up their eyes a hell of a lot. And then they start to trust the process a bit more that, we've got to do some of these fundamentals first. XYZ is not done, or XYZ is not done. You need to focus on those pieces before we start getting into, full-on demand generation and stuff like that. Your sales process is broken. Let's fix that. The guys aren't entering the data in. Cool. That's a fundamental problem. Like, if you want to do this stuff, we need to have everyone entering the data properly. And that's a really, really, really common one. And I think that's where, like the way we do it, a lot of our work is seed and grow the client as well, solve their problem with that, micro thing, build trust, and then keep feeding them with new ways of doing things. But yeah, sales teams are really interesting. And that's actually one thing I do love about the HubSpot CRM, that it is user-friendly first. It's not management first. And, you can actually get people to use it, which is pretty rare.
Yeah. And when you have that, it sounds like you have the full funnel mentality with them. Are they already thinking that way, or are they thinking in terms of marketing and sales or siloed? And like, what do you do to help them bridge that gap? Because they're probably not used to being talked to that way, but that's a guess on my part.
Yeah, no, definitely not. So, I always have a vision for a client of where I'd like it to get to. Now, whether they see that vision as well, and whether I then articulate it that well, probably not. Like, that's something that we're working on. But I find that, I love that analogy. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. But until you get a client to actually understand that there's a problem, it's really hard to help them. And that's what we've been working on internally, on some simple things to get clients to understand that there's a problem and that needs to be worked on, rather than, us, telling them that this is a massive problem, or rather than, because I like to see it as an opportunity as well, as like, not what's the issues list. It's like, well, what are the 50 opportunities we have to do, and then build out a roadmap for the client as well, which they start to see getting ticked off. Yeah,
sure. And then how do you guys decide, since you don't set concrete goals, like how do you decide what to work on first? Like, it sounds like you're capable of doing the sales side, the marketing side. How do you decide what needs the most work?
Yeah. So it'll come down to, if there's no infrastructure in place, so we'll set the infrastructure. If there's no simple stuff, no personas, or they've got to be done. If the website really sucks, then we will go and fix it. And then we'll pull the data in and say, right, your visitor to lead conversion is terrible. You need some more assets. You need to build some stuff out. And that's when you go into the quarterlies, right, we need to do, 2 assets this quarter. What persona is it for? What stage is it for? Ideally, you would focus at the bottom of the funnel if that's a problem, if they're not getting those conversions there, and then work your way up. Just, it depends on the client too. But that's rule of thumb. Wherever the metrics are way out, is go and fix that first, and show them that too. And that's where we use, visualizing that with Databox, using annotations, put a recommendation at high level on our boards, and then when this was changed, this is what happened. And ideally then you'll see those, those spikes.
So it sounds like you set 3 individual goals with their company. Is that right?
Yeah. Like if it was annually, I would expect them to present us, the 3 goals for the year or whatever it is. And then from that, we would go, right, this would be our recommendations for the next 12 months. Then quarterly, we would sit down and review that, what's working, what's not. Do we need to adjust what we're doing? And then get into it. And then that's when we work on these quarterly cycles, not so much monthly anymore. You can't do enough work and you can't get enough done in a month. So we work in these quarterly.
And when you do your quarterly reports, do you comment on all 3 of those goals, or do you just focus on 1 or 2, whatever you happen to be working on at the time?
It'd be what we've been working on for sure. Yeah.
Okay, got it. And so it sounds like internally, do you do any like monthly tracking for the metrics, or you just like have your set for the quarter and then you move that out the door?
Yeah, so no, it'll be so every month, like internally we have a series of meetings, and then with clients we have a series of meetings. Client meetings are more generally whip related, to making sure that we're moving the needle, getting feedback, all that sort of stuff. But we also use the Databox score, the agency scorecard, or call it whatever you want, in the back end. You can't put exactly every goal that we would like for every single client in there, but you can get a good feel. And if there is red flags, I would expect the account managers to go in and go, right, here's 3 or 4 quick wins. Call them the 1%ers if you like, that you're always adding value to a client when you meet with them. You're not just talking about what we've executed on. I call that future pacing. Like, what's the stuff that we can be forward selling for next year and putting on their wish list, so that we're always adding value all the time, not and trying to simplify it, not make it like it's this huge, big, complicated task. But yeah, simplifying the process as much as we can, but there's always something that we can be doing for them.
Brian talks to a lot of people about leading and lagging indicators on calls, and
Yeah.
it sounds like you're one of the ones that has bought in to a bigger level. Can you describe like why you chose to do that? What got you so excited about it?
Yeah, so I rule like at the core. So I played a lot of sport as a kid, and I was quite a good runner. So rewind to, I think I was like year 9. I'm not sure what you call that, but I was about 14, and I'd had a bit of success as a young guy, and then I lost a race, and my ego was getting to my head a bit, got ahead of myself, and I was probably not training as hard as I should. Anyway, we set a plan and we executed on it. And you look at it, the leading indicator is all the training and work you do. The lag indicator is the race, and the outcome of me. So with clients, we do exactly that. Now, leading indicators are actually really hard to build out within anything, unless you have it on a chalkboard or a whiteboard or something like that. But to do it in Databox and automate it, we've got pretty close. There are a few things that we're working on that still aren't quite there, but simple as that. It just made sense to me. Activities versus outcomes, simple as that. Most people report on outcomes, they don't report on the activity. And that is generally because the lack of technology is possible, or they don't use the systems properly, rule of thumb. So it's important that obviously if you're going to do leading indicators, that the team use the systems properly. But I can pretty much tell you, once you have problems with clients and you show them the leading indicators, it removes every problem that we had as a business, that we didn't deliver something, to there's internal people issues within the client.
Yeah. What are some common leading indicators that you guys track?
Let me just bring them up, because so like number of contacts in workflows is one at one stage. Number of blogs published, number of ads running. Impressions is actually a leading indicator, because the more impressions, then the more visitors you're going to get. So it does come down to the stages of the journey. You start then getting into the sales process, so number of calls, number of SQLs, number of meetings had, obviously deals created, not necessarily just deals won. You can't present all of this to a client, though. It's just too overwhelming. But once you start having those conversations with the client and you're not getting results, then you actually bring it in as the evidence piece. Is like, well, these are your leading indicators. You want to generate $4 million, but you're only investing X. You need to focus some more on this activity. And that opens them up to that sort of conversation.
Okay, last question for you here. Are there any specific features in Databox that have worked out really well for you that you think have helped this process?
I think obviously making it look good is really important. And simple to do. Uh, really brought out the goal piece. Problem I did, I went and deployed a whole heap of them, and now I've got so many in lots of different areas, which we're going to clean up again. But I really like that you can have a dashboard of all of your clients, your core goals, and where they're tracking. They'd be probably, and then the annotations. That's really, really, really handy to annotate when things have been done. We just launched a new website, ticking that, making another change here, tick that. You don't need much, simple line item, as long as you can explain the story behind it. It's really important. So, yeah, I think the visualization of it, obviously annotations, and then, the goals would be the three things, I think.